The medieval world could be a difficult and a dangerous place to live. Just after the medieval period, London began keeping these bills of mortality to record all of the causes of death for people every week in the city. And they range from things like consumption and convulsions to gangrene and even just having bad teeth. And that's without getting onto the battlefield too. So I've come to the Commandery, a former medieval hospital, to find out more about what medieval healthcare looked like, what treatments were available, and how the wounded might be cared for. So Kevin, I'm really keen to try and understand the state of medieval medicine. I think we have lots of ideas that they were a little bit rubbish, it was all a little bit of a joke. So how much do we know about the state of medicine in the medieval world?
We actually know more about medieval medicine and surgery than we do about medieval archery. We've still got all the writings. A lot of the techniques that were practiced then are still practiced today.
So if I'm ill in the medieval world, I'm not feeling very well today, who am I going to go and see?
Depends on how much money you have. If you're rich, you're going to see a physician who's been to the medical schools of Montpellier, Salerno. But what happens if you aren't rich? You'll see a surgeon. He's a well-trained man, not a butcher. Well, you can't afford a surgeon. Then you're going to have to see a barber. Next below them, we have the empirics, the wise men and women. What happens if you don't have any money at all? You can come here to a hospital. Their view of illness is you are ill because you have sinned. They're going to pray over you and they are going to intercede with God on your behalf.
Interesting. So if somewhere like this, a hospital, is relying on religion to fix you, if I'm doing all right, I've got a bit of money in my pocket, maybe you're a surgeon, I come and see you, not feeling very well, maybe I've got a cold. I mean, this is a frightening array of things you've got on the table here that I would walk into. What are you going to be thinking in terms of diagnosing me and then treating me?
Well, the first thing I'm going to be thinking of is it's always money up front. Then what we're going to look at is the balance of your humours. Medieval medicine was based around the 4 humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile and black bile. If your humours are equal, you are healthy. If you've got too much of a particular humour or not enough, you're unhealthy because you're in a state of dis-ease. And if you put dis and ease together, what do you get? Disease. What the physician is going to be looking at, or the surgeon, what are the symptoms that reveal that your humours are out of balance, the way an illness manifests itself. We're also begin looking at complexion. If you're flushed, too much blood. If you're pale, too much phlegm. If you're yellowish, too much yellow bile.
So if I come to see you and I feel like I've got a cold, what tests might you do to try and work out what's really wrong with me?
Well, I don't have to do a test because you're a runny nose, you're coughing up lots of nasty stuff, so I know you've got too much phlegm. Phlegm is cold and wet. I might recommend you take some food or spices that are hot and that will cut through the phlegm. So one of these.
So how common is something like ginger? Is that something I could grow in my own garden?
No, this is rich man's stuff. This has to come from the east. So this is only available for the very, very rich. All spices are. They did have bathhouses, but they weren't saunas. So I might, if you've got the money, get some ginger or pepper, make a nice tisane, a nice drink of it, and that's going to heat your body up. It's very much about balancing out the humours.
Interesting. So what else would you have at your disposal if I'm less sure about what's wrong with me? How would you work out what humours are out of balance for me?
Okay, first off, very much as a doctor would do today. So we're going to look at your symptoms, we're going to look at your complexion, take your pulse, listen to your heart, and also ask questions about diet, what you've been drinking, how much exercise you've been taking, and most importantly, have you sinned?
That's where the visit to the GP differs slightly.
Exactly. One of the most famous ways of testing for imbalance of humours in medieval times was testing of the urine.
Here's some I prepared earlier.
It is. I think you had a very good night last night. because the first thing we have to do, we have to look at the colour. Now the colour is important. This is a copy from a 15th century urine chart. As you can see, there's an array of colours. That's fairly dark. Now today we know that's dehydrated, but back then, oh, you could have a bit too much yellow bile there, but it could be worse if it was red, because then you've got too much blood. And if your urine had gone from green to black, it meant you've got too much black bile and you're going to die. So the colour of the urine was really important, and still is today.
I was going to say, again, it's not a million miles away from medicine today. You can tell a lot from the colour of the urine. Presumably they don't have the dipsticks, though, to tell you if it's full of sugar.
No. If your urine has gone from green to black, it means your liver stopped working and you need a liver transplant. That's what we know today. Now, they didn't have little sticks to dip in urine. The first thing they would do is they would smell the urine. You can tell a lot by the aroma. I don't recommend you do this at home. What you've eaten, what you've been drinking. The most famous example is asparagus. You can smell that in the way. And the next test is, no, I'm not drinking it. That's a fallacy. What you would do is place the finger in and taste.
Nature's dipstick.
Yeah, right. And then spit. That was the most important thing. If that urine is sweet, it means that person had diabetes type 2. Because diabetes mellitus, diabetes type 2, means sweet urine. And for many years, that was still the test carried out by doctors. Finger in, taste, sweet, diabetes type 2, until it was replaced by the sticks.
It's fascinating, though, that the theory, the principle is still exactly the same.
Yeah. It hasn't changed. So the theory is there, the test are underway. So still the foundations on which modern medicine is built.
Fascinating. And so once you've managed to establish where you think my humours are out of balance, what kind of treatment might you be looking to give me with this array of dangerous looking things?
Believe it or not, we're not going to go straight into burning you or cutting you.
Good.
You'll be told, change your diet, take more exercise, drink less. Does any of this sound horribly familiar? It's actually quite a holistic approach. If that's not working, then we're going to have to purge you. And one of the most famous ways of purging is through bleeding. So we've got two ways of bleeding. We've got venesection, which is a general bleed. So if you would like to roll up a sleeve, I need you to clench your fist. The reason you need to clench your fist is we need to make those veins pop out nicely, right? So what I'm going to do, I'll make a cut and then I'll just let it bleed for about 10 to 15 minutes. So you've had a nice purge, and then to treat it, put your finger on it. There we go. That's a general bleed. That's to make you feel a little bit better.
And would it make you feel better?
Not really, it depends on the illness. But we're now going to go into the second kind of bleeding. That is going to be for a specific illness. And trust me, that could be done anywhere on the body. But you're lucky. It's your arm again. Now, what we're going to do is something called wet cupping. Everybody's heard of dry cupping, and this was done during the medieval period, because what you would do, you'd heat up the cup, you would place it on the arm, and as the cup cools down, the excess humours will be drawn through the pores. Now that's dry cupping. We're not doing that. We're doing wet cupping. We get the flea.
I'm not sure I like the smile on your face there.
A man must take pleasure in his occupation. We make a cut. This time we get the hot cup, we place it over, and because there is a vacuum, it's going to draw out the blood. That's wet cupping. Now, while dry cupping is still practiced today as part of Eastern medicine, that's no longer done, wet cupping. And now we come to the second and probably the most infamous method of specific bleeding.
Presume that's not just a jar of water.
No, the leech, Hirudo medicinalis. They have 300 teeth, 6 eyes, 32 brains, and they're real-life vampires.
Do I have to get my arm out again?
No. The problem you have is these leeches aren't sterile, so you could get an infection.
So just to be clear, it's the leeches that aren't sterile, not me.
Correct.
Perfect.
Right.
And I think we have got something that looks like it might be for the leeches.
Yes, while we consider a bowl of raw liver quite unappetising, the leeches, if we're lucky, might find it quite delicious.
And how difficult is it to get leeches to do what you want them to do? Are they keen for a meal like this?
Well, it depends. Leeches tend to feed once a year. Oh, yes, straighty.
So what are they actually doing in there now, Kevin?
Well, at the moment, the one is quite happily feeding. You can see the arch of the neck. Now, as it arches its neck, it's pushing down with its jaws, it's biting in, it's injecting the rodin, which is anticoagulant, and it's quite happily sucking the blood.
So if that was actually on my arm, would that hurt? Would I feel him drinking?
Not because they have an anaesthetic in their saliva. So you might feel a tiny, tiny nip, and that would be it. And then they'll quite happily stay there, and then when they've had their fill, they'll just drop off. The problem is it'll carry on bleeding then for up to 4 hours, and there is nothing in medical science to stop that bleeding. You see, when you have got a leech on you, you must never disturb it because it regurgitates its last meal back into your bloodstream and could cause an infection.
Is he going to jump out?
Whoa, no.
Is he not enjoying that liver?
No, we're trying to get out now. He's Go on, I've got to find the other one.
This was your sandwich for dinner? Get a bit of bread. And if they're for specific areas, how easy is it to get them to latch on where you want them to? Because they don't seem like they're going to play ball in there.
We return to the cup. So what we would do, we place the leech in the cup, place it on the required area, and then we just wait for the leech to bite. And that's still how it is done today in hospitals.
And so there is medical benefit to having that done.
Leeches are still used today, especially in plastic surgery, reconstructive surgery. And the next generation blood thinners is going to be coming from leech saliva.
Little medical marvels.
They are.
So is removing blood from my body for any reason the only thing you would do?
Oh no. There's another method I can use. Roll up your sleeve. This is cauterizing. I'm going to basically burn you. It's called medical cauterizing. We're going to raise a blister. There is surgical cauterizing, but that's for stopping bleeding. So what we do, we get the cauterizing iron hot in the fire, and we place it just gently on, and then we raise the blister, and then we pop the blister.
So you're just deliberately burning me?
Yes.
And
It's for your own good.
what good is that doing me?
It's releasing the humours.
So that will bring things to the surface, and popping the blister will allow them to
Exactly.
get out.
So it's releasing the humours, you're having a purge. And you could have different shapes if you wanted.
Do they perform a different purpose, or is that just a choice?
It's artistic value.
I don't know what I prefer at this stage. I mean, this is a dangerous looking array of different things. Are these just different sizes and shapes for
Yes.
different burns?
Yes, it's for different. Yeah. So your pain, you can have whichever shape you want. You can have the size you want. It's up to you.
Designer burns.
Indeed.
So we've got blood, we've got blisters getting humours out of the body. Is there a less painful way to do it?
Well, purging just doesn't involve blisters or bleeding. I could give you something to make you sick, or I could give you diarrhea by applying the enema.
So that's not an ear trumpet.
No. You could use it, just make sure the end's been mushed.
Terrifying. And what's the theory with one of these? How does this benefit me?
So this is called the clister, and what happens is we insert that and we pour the medicine in. It was also administered if you had a headache. Well, takes your mind off a headache.
So it seems a bit like, you stub one toe, so I'll stamp on the other foot to distract you from the pain in that one. I'm just going to cause you another medical problem.
You can either use it for giving you the substance that's going to give you loose bells, or you can administer medicine with it. So it can be used in other two ways. And even today, enemas are still used. They've never really gone out of fashion.
So all of these different ways to purge, to drive humours from the body.
Yes.
And just to be clear, I'm paying you for this.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So aside from things like being bled, if I was to come to see a medieval doctor or physician or surgeon with something really specific, and I think when we think about the medieval period, we think about something like leprosy. Is there anything you could do for me if I turned up and you thought I had leprosy?
You wouldn't come to a physician or a surgeon or any medic with leprosy. Leprosy is the result of sin. Effectively, what would happen is you'd be an outcast. You would most likely go to a Lazar house, which was a hospice set up under the name of St. Lazarus, the patron saint of lepers.
And we had this idea as well of lepers going around, ringing bells to warn people to keep away from them. Is that accurate?
Well, we do have pictures of lepers with bells, but bells are expensive, they're metal. Another way of doing it was to use these clappers, or clackers, whichever you will. People would hear this and they'd know to get out the way or to keep a distance.
I wonder if people in the football terraces in decades gone by realised quite what they were doing when they had things like that.
However, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because what would happen is, while people would avoid you, they believed in giving you money or alms, because that way you're doing good in the sight of God, because lepers are seen as suffering from purgatory on earth. By giving you money, they're securing themselves a place in heaven.
So if I contracted leprosy, what could a doctor do for me?
The truth is, not a lot. We don't call leprosy today. It's called Hansen's disease. Today, we know it's caused by bacteria. Back then, it was punishment from God. And the truth was, there was nothing a physician could do for you. Now, here I have a replica skull of a leper. Now, believe it or not, leprosy, or as we call it today, Hansen's disease, is actually very, very difficult to catch. You have to live for quite a few years with a leper or someone with Hansen's disease. You breathe in the bacteria and it attacks your nervous system, your blood supply, your immune system. Frequently caused the nasal bones to be reabsorbed into the body. You lost the upper palate. If you injured your fingers or your toes, you get gangrene, leaving them to drop off. It was a very, very horrible disease.
And also quite a visible one, I guess. If you're in the community, people can clearly see there is something very wrong with you.
This is why they were always separated. However, with the Lazar houses, a leper could take their families with them.
Wouldn't they be concerned about the health of the family bringing them with them to a leper house?
No, not really.
It's a really interesting juxtaposition, isn't it, between wanting to help these people but keep your distance from them, and I guess they have a really visible element to this illness. So if there's not really any treatment for something like leprosy, how would medieval medicine deal with an unusual and unexpected event, say like the Black Death?
Okay. Black Death, believe it or not, was caused by too much sin.
Got it.
The problem we've got is man has sinned too much. God has sent the pestilence to punish humanity. Again, you're dealing in a time where they don't understand that it's caused by the Yersinia pestis. That's in the future. So to them, it's all to do with miasma, or bad air, which was the other way your humours went out of balance due to breathing in infected air, or dirty air. Unfortunately, guess what? There's no real treatment available. What can we do? Well, we can give you a nice pomander of sweet-smelling herbs. We've got rosemary, we've got fennel, we've got bay. So you hold that garland beneath your nose as you're walking about the streets.
Smells lovely.
Yeah, but that's keeping the bad air, the miasma at bay. And this is where the pomanders came from. But in addition to this, we could also set fires in the streets, have large amounts of smoke billowing up to drive the miasma away.
It smells quite nice, to be fair, as well.
It does, yeah. So if you think about it, you're stopping the miasma. You're not breathing it in.
And it's interesting, though, that they didn't understand germ theory, but they got that it came from the air. And this isn't all that dissimilar to wearing a mask, is it?
No. Now, that brings us on to the next question about the infamous plague doctor masks. We never had them in this country. They were 17th century. They were in Europe. There is no record of them during the medieval period. They're very, very fetching. They grab the imagination, but not in this country, unfortunately. Physicians gave Guido Chiliac said, with plague, run far and run fast, which is what a lot of the rich people did. They escaped from the towns, but they also had something a bit more fancy if they're going to breathe it. If you're wealthy, you can have frankincense and myrrh. We all know, mentioned in the Bible, but they are resins and they are extremely expensive. They come from Africa and the Middle East, so only the really, really rich can afford these.
Are they effective, though? Is being rich doing me any favours here? Does this work better than the pomander?
No. The problem is, the only thing that's helping you is putting yourself into quarantine. Is to getting a distance from the area where there is plague. That is the only thing that is going to help you.
Which again is helped by being rich.
Exactly.
Having somewhere to go.
Exactly.
So you might have thought the frankincense and myrrh was helping. Actually, it's just having a house in the country that you can get away to.
Exactly.
So if none of that had worked and I'd got the Black Death, is there anything a doctor could do for me?
They could try some things. They could give you various medicines, which, to be honest, wouldn't work. But there are 3 kinds of plague. The first is bubonic plague. Bubonic plague is when you are bit by a flea that carries Yersinia pestis. Another more physical attempt would be to try and perforate the buboes. When you're bitten by a flea and you develop the plague, what happens is you develop buboes at the lymph nodes nearest to the bite. In your neck, your armpit, or in your groin. And the bubo is a large purplish swelling. And in those swelling, you've got a nasty bacteria multiplying. How are we going to treat it?
I guess the natural thing feels to cut it open. That's what you've done for everything else that I've got. You've cut me open.
True. I can get a knife and I can cut it. But this isn't necessarily a good thing. If I cut it or burn it, there's a risk of infection. And also, by perforating it, I can send all that bacteria around and cause more cases. So it's quite dangerous.
So this is the one instance in medieval medicine where cutting was not a good idea.
Correct. You could actually survive the bubonic variant, but there's 2 other variants. One is septicemic, and that poisons your blood. You've got a low chance of surviving that. But
Not even my friendly leeches are going to
Not the leeches, but then there's the third one, the deadliest. This is the one that killed most people, the pneumonic variant. Gets into your lungs, you're coughing up blood, coughing up the Yersinia pestis, the disease. 3 days, that's all you've got. You're sharing a house with someone, they're dead. So, with the plague, no, there's nothing you can do to survive. But some people did survive it, however. And that's why we're here.
It's interesting how much of this feels still applicable, but how much of what the medieval doctor was doing has now been debunked?
In the 1850s, Louis Pasteur discovered germs. So that was the beginning of the end for the 4 humours. But don't forget, the 4 humours had been around for 2,000 years. So this idea of humours still carried on for a while. Florence Nightingale, she believed in miasma until she was an old lady when she came to accept germs. Gradually, it died out. But it's still with us today. anyone who uses the phrase feed a cold and starve a fever, that still relates to humoral medicine. So if you've got a cold, which is phlegm, which is cold and wet, you eat food, you heat the body up, it dries the phlegm out. If you have a fever, which is too much yellow bile, which is hot and dry, you starve the body and you cool it down. So it's still with us, but today it's only a hangover, it's gone.
It's striking though that it was around for thousands of years. We think of it as so distant, but it's less than 200 years ago, really. People were still utterly reliant on this as a form of medicine.
I think what we've got to bear in mind is that a lot of technological developments in that short period of time. We still use the basis, however, of what the medieval medics were practicing. We still use the same diagnosis, method of diagnosis, and we still use some of the same techniques. You can still be bled for iron overload in the blood. Leeches are still used for reconstructive surgery. As your mother told you when you were a child and somebody was ill, keep away from them. You don't want to be catching that. Quarantine, keeping away from people who are sick, also worked. You're still told about your diet, what you're drinking, how much exercise. It's still there, it's just a different philosophy. But that doesn't mean we should disrespect it, it's just a different way of thinking.
Yeah, it feels like however much we might sneer, laugh at some of this, actually we ought to give it a bit more respect than we do.
They laid the foundations and we've built on them.